Hey guys, Brandflex here with another video on a total return. This time we'll be doing a food tier list, which will hopefully be a bit more enlightening than the last tier list was for general gameplay. So this tier list will be one that will be concerning more about the food you can craft. So food is pretty important in herbs. If you want to heal in the middle of a fight, you need to craft food. And honestly, there are a lot of different foods in this game, so it can be kind of daunting to get past that. So I'm hoping with this video that I can help you guys out with knowing which foods to make and which foods to not bother putting into your memory bank. So let's get started with this really quickly, shall we? So in the final tier, we do have something called Don't Bother, which are foods that you really should not bother making ever. You will see these pop up in your crafting slots very often, but you should not touch these at all. So let's just get started with these. So we'll actually go ahead and start with, all three of these foods are with bread. So you'll see these foods a lot while you're playing the game and looting, because it will constantly bother you until you get that starting bread out of your inventory. So we'll just slot them all in just because they're all equally as terrible. It's going to be carp bread, egg bun, and garlic ramen. So all these foods, they heal below 500. They come in pairs, which isn't that great considering how badly they heal. And yeah, there's really not a point in making them. They're green foods, you don't get that much experience, you don't get that much healing, they don't enable anything. And honestly, a lot of these foods aren't even that accessible to grab, and you're not even clearing inventory because all you've done is you just converted the bread slot you're already holding into another food that's not even that great. Going into the not great tier, we're going to start with honey garlic, which is a food that doesn't heal that much, but it does come in threes, and it does come from one zone, which is alley. So if you're in a pinch and you really just want to keep fighting and you don't want to go out of your way to find more food, honey garlic is a great way to just grab and go. And honestly, even if you're just farming an alley, if you've taken some scratch damage from the bears or the wolves there, you can grab this and just eat it as you farm and to be topped off for any encounter you might have. We have chocolate ice, chocolate ice cream isn't the worst, but it is kind of inconvenient to make. The healing quality is pretty in line with the rest of the foods in the not great tier, but it is very inconvenient. You're better off using your chocolate and your ice for other things, so I wouldn't bother with this food if you have a choice. It's just not great because for certain routes you can make this, and it's not the worst food in that scenario. Canned cod liver is a food you can get from beach very easily. You grab the cod, you grab the cans, you combine them, and it gives you some pretty decent food for what it's worth. Honestly, not the best food if it comes down to it, but you can't go wrong with just having 500 HP healing food from one zone. Again, very similar vibe as the honey garlic, which is just you want to continue fighting, you grab that, and you keep going. The egg, so this egg food, I always forget what it's called because I rarely use it, but it's a very similar idea as the canned cod liver, where you're just going to grab the eggs from forest. I think it's a one zone from forest. You grab the eggs from forest, you grab another food from forest, you mash them together, you have a cheap food that will last you maybe one fight tops. Coffee buns are honestly not that bad. The issue with coffee buns is that they have an older brother called Mocha Bread, which is much better and not much harder to make. So coffee buns, they also heal not that much. They will produce pairs, so you need 2 coffees to create 4 to use both your breads. And unfortunately, coffee doesn't quite have 2 per spawning or per loot distribution, otherwise it might be much better. So if you make coffee buns early game, you might just have an odd bread lying around until you find another coffee, and this is really awkward. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that is because the next food we're going to go to talk about, which is Mocha Bread, is much easier to make en route in much more even quantities. So for Mocha Bread, you get the coffee, and then you get an alcohol, which makes coffee liquor, and then that coffee liquor is created in pairs. So once you've made that coffee liquor, you just slap it together with both your breads, and you've made 4 mocha breads, which heal more than the coffee buns, have given you more experience, and have not made your inventory quite as much of a mess that the coffee bun would have made. So it's honestly, mocha breads just kind of overshadow coffee buns in every way possible. So if you have a choice, you'd always make the mocha breads. And I should probably explain these tiers. So not great just means that, again, you can make them, you shouldn't go out of your way to make them unless you're in some specific scenario. And then en route foods are actually foods that are not the worst, but they're very difficult to make once you're off your initial route. And the reason why mocha bread specifically is a food that's hard to make off your initial route is because the bread requirement is very hard to get to. Bread only spawns in 2 zones, it's a very limited amount, And like I mentioned earlier, coffee liquor comes in pairs, so you're also going to find one bread, and you have to go through the effort of getting the coffee and the alcohol, and you combine it, and you only get a pair of Mocha Bread instead of all four. It's just a pain in the butt, and you really don't want to go through that if you're new and trying to like figure out inventory management and also making out time objectives and farm and whatever. Very similar case for chocolate pies. Chocolate pies actually heal you for a lot, but it's the same issue where you have to get bread, and then you have to get chocolate, and you get a box, and for certain routes it's very easy to combine all that. But once you're off your route, having to go find bread, then going to another zone to find chocolate, and then going to another zone to find boxes, you'll find that there's no zone that have all three of these ingredients in the same place, or even two of the ingredients in the same place. So it's just a huge like wild goose chase of finding these materials for food that isn't even that incredible when it comes to experience or even healing. Birthday cakes are honestly in the zone between on route and don't bother. There is one very specific route that can go birthday cakes, and even that route doesn't necessarily want to go birthday cakes because of how much of an inventory clog it is. So you get a pair of lemons, you have a pair of bread. In order to make birthday cakes, you need to make citrus cake, and then find eggs to create it. So when you're making birthday cakes, you're more than likely going to only be making 2 to 4. You can make a total of 8, but finding 4 eggs is impossible. So honestly, just kind of consider birthday cakes in the don't bother category more than anything. The healing isn't bad, but it's very, very hard to make these in any large amount of quantity. We'll go on to the rum raisin bread. Rum and raisin bread, again, it's the same vein as these items, which is a bread item. So getting the bread after the route is really inconvenient, but it's a great on route item. It heals less than Mocha Bread, but it's much easier to make like instantly. You just have to find one alcohol, and then that combines with the one of the 2 waters you spawned with, and then that combines with both the breads you spawned with. And then you still have 1 water to make your SP food with if you find a lighter or something. So it's a very easy food to make. It's a little bit worse, but you trade off the healing quality for the cheapness of the item. We'll talk about hamburgers really quickly. Hamburgers are kind of the healing item you go on route if you have literally no other item to go for. And so it's not the best. You also get a very low quality amount, but if you're planning on going other food to begin with, like foods that are in the accessible mediocre tier, then you can go for these hamburgers for 1 fight and then go off and make your better food and then come back with actual food after that. So it's a very good on-route item, but it's probably the weakest on-route item out of the 3 or out of the 7 total that will spawn on here. Well, I guess 6 now that we've moved the birthday cake down. So the other 2 items are actually going to be from the family of boiling water. These 2 items are honestly not that hard to make after the route, but it's more the issue that boiling water can go to much better foods to make, and also eggs and ornamental herbs aren't that easy to find. So these both heal the same amount. You can find both these ingredients in forest, so they're very easy to make if you go to a lighter zone and then hop into forest, and you get 3 of them per craft. So it's a lot of food, very accessible. While you have the boiling water, the healing isn't that great again, but it's a lot of food. So if you're going to contest Hotel Tree, if you're going to go over and contest Cemetery Tree, you can just run over there really quickly with a lot of food and potentially outlast your opponent. But those zones don't quite always go to that point. We do actually have one more on route item, which is going to be the cold ramen. So the cold ramen is an item, or cold noodles rather. Cold noodles are an item that are kind of awkward when it comes down to it, because these items will consume an ice water and a ramen, and there are routes that go these things, but it's very specific characters that can grab these items, and you might find yourself with a character that, so basically any character that doesn't consume SP to use skills will be able to craft cold noodles more often than not. But if your character needs to use a lot of SP for skills, you'll find yourself going for purified water, which directly contests with this food. So it's a very niche food for on route, but it does exist, so it's not too bad, all things considered. And then we're going to go for experience. So these foods are actually foods that you can make pretty easily. Like they're very easy to make, and you can slap them down whenever you want, just for experience if you're in the area for it. So the very first one is going to be the grilled Chilean sea bass. You just get heated stones, which you can find from bears in beach if you're lucky. You go over to the zone, you fish some fish up, craft them, drop them, move on with your life. They're also decent like emergency foods if you do have no more food when you kill that bear, but it's mostly just used to craft and drop, if we're being honest. Same thing with the other sea fish food, which is going to be spicy fish stew. Shokais will be the character that most abuse this one, but again, if you have boiling water on you for some odd reason and you just want to get rid of it but you don't want to drop it for some weird reason, you can always teleport to beach, uptown, or dock, craft these, and then drop them again. The healing, again, is pretty mediocre, but it is suitable for like a quick fight or two. Like if you need food and you can make these, then just go ahead and make them. It's like no sweat off your back. So hot ramen and garlic ramen are actually going into like the same branch of food. So hot ramen is going to be boiling water again with just ramen, and that's going to create a pair of hot ramen. And so the reason why it's good for experience is because you just have to find garlic to create garlic ramen, and then you can make up to 4 garlic ramens per hot ramen craft. So what you're gonna do, so temple's honestly the easiest way to get these. Sorry, I don't know if the ice is melting. I'm hearing like weird scraping noises. But anyway, so it's really easy to craft these items all in temple. So you get your boiling water, you run up a temple. If you want that really fast experience to craft a bunch of blue foods, you gotta go to temple, grab the ramen, make the hot ramen, grab the garlic, make the garlic ramen. And the food quantity is a lot if you hit all of the garlic you need. And the experience is also really good because you're double crafting blue foods for a very, very low investment besides the time it takes to open the boxes. Not necessarily the best use of your time, but it is it's again very accessible and not the worst thing to do if you're in temple to fight for, let's say, the bears or meteor spawning there and you have the ingredients to begin with. So we're gonna go to the accessible mediocre. All these foods are foods that heal about the same, but they're very, very easy to make. So to start off with, we'll just go with the heated stone family first. So that's gonna be baked potatoes and grilled Chilean sea bass. These two foods, you get a pair of them. You get a pair of hot rocks or heated stone from a lighter, and then a pair of rocks. You combine that, you go over to potatoes, you can make 6 potatoes. You go over to the river fish, you can make 6 baked carp, and it's super easy. It's a lot of food very quickly, and the food again isn't that great, but it's a lot of food and it heals for a pretty good amount for a very easy thing to make, because you can make baked potatoes from one zone and alley. Baked carp is a little harder to do, but if you kill the wolves in forest and you get heated stone, you just drop over to the river or the little pond and grab these and go. Fried chicken will probably be the food you make the most out of the heated oil drops if you're just trying to go for aggression and go to objectives and hit everything and everyone. These are great because heated oil drops pretty regularly from wolves and from bears, so if you guys probably have noticed, meat drops from almost every animal in the game. So if you get the heated oil and you just need food now and you need food immediately, you don't want to bother going for the fish and chips, you can make fried chicken very easily. You just grab the heated oil, go to the pair of wolves you killed, make 4 fried chicken, go on with their life and go on for the day. Steak is basically the exact same vein as fried chicken. The quality is a bit lower, it's a bit less healing, but you get a lot of steak. You get 4 steak per craft. And again, meat is everywhere. Heated stone is not that hard to make, so if you just want food for the sake of eating food and like potentially not losing a fight because you had 100 less HP at the end of it, steak is your go-to person. You'll love it if you make it, and honestly, sometimes steak's all you need for an entire game. Healing pots are kind of the classic healing food. I'm sure everyone recognizes this. All you have to do for healing pots, you go into, so there's 2 pairs of 1-2 zones that you can go to for these that make it really easy to make. You can either go forest into chapel or vice versa, or the other option is pond into avenue or vice versa. You create the orchids, which are from forest or pond respectively, and then you go into chapel or avenue to grab the glass bottles, and you make 4 potions, which honestly, the healing has dropped off since their glory days, but it's a lot of healing, it's a lot of food. It's very easy to make while you're doing something else, so it's never a bad choice to go for them. And then garlic, I forget what these are called. I think it's called garlic breadsticks or something. These are kind of a little bit out of place because they're the only green food outside of hamburgers on route and above. But this is honestly a very good food. It heals the same as steak, and it's just as easy to make. It is a green food and it only comes in 2s. But if you're in alley, you just grab, garlic is everywhere, and as I've already mentioned multiple times, meat is everywhere. So if you're out of food and you have a garlic on you, you just kill a boar, make this, take a fight. And that's super easy to do because garlic is very rarely taken since garlic ramen has fallen off. So you can find garlic anywhere, and if you find yourself low on food, like running out of food, and you don't have time to go to a lighter zone to find a lighter, but you're in a garlic zone, you just grab the garlic, shove it into a boar, and then there you go. Cheap food for one fight, and if you win that fight, you get your food refill very quickly and eat very easily. So the inconvenient and good quality foods are foods that are that are much more inconvenient to make because you have to combine certain foods with things that you can't quite find super easily or are in limited supply. So we'll start with the butter foods because the butter foods are kind of the best foods you can go for if you have the time and you don't want to bother with fish and chips. So to make butter, you need milk and you need branches. Branches you find are collectibles around the map, and milk specifically spawned from, I believe it's going to be Chapel, Hospital, and Avenue. And while milk isn't used for any recipes, people will take it pretty often just to chug along their route. So if you find, and also making butter and stuff is really time consuming because you have to find the milk, luckily, and you have to find 2 branches for a pair of butter just lying around the map, and you have to go to a zone with the corresponding items to make these butter foods. And again, this food heals for a lot. Like these are definitely a tier above everything else below. The only issue is that making butter again is very time consuming, and sometimes you just don't have that time. So if you're gonna put that time in to make these butter foods, I recommend butterfried potatoes, and the honey butter, just because those two, the foods that combine with butter for these 2 items are very accessible, and they do come in pairs. So it's gonna be potatoes, and it's gonna be honey. Chocolate chips, unfortunately, only come in singles when you open boxes, so it's gonna be much more time consuming to get 2 chocolates to make these chocolate chips, and you don't even get better healing from it. These 2 foods are going to be the heated oil foods that directly compete with fish and chips, which is why they're not quite as valuable to go for. I think the fried ramen is much more easy to make because fried ramen is a one-zoner from factory. You can get your heated oil from your light iron oil, and then you get the ramen from another box, and you've gotten a pair of fried ramen. It's a very good healing source, and it's very easy to make. So if there's like alpha or omega spawning in factory, or it's like a final zone, you've run out of food, it's very good food for the ease you can get it from. Again, the only issue is that you're directly competing with fish and chips. And then scrambled eggs are the same healing as fried ramen. The issue is very similar to chocolate chips, where you have to go out of your way to find the eggs that spawn in singles and are in the same zone. Like, fried ramen is good because you get it all from factory. Scrambled eggs are kind of not as good because you have to teleport to somewhere with eggs, which I can't even name most of the places off. Like, I can name 4 and that's it. So it's kind of inconvenient to get scrambled eggs. So if you're gonna go for not fish and chips with your heated oil, I'd go for fried chicken or fried ramen every time. Great but RNG foods are foods that heal a lot, but you have to sacrifice a RNG piece for them. So holy water is mithril plus water, and it heals a lot. It heals more than any craftable food in the game, and it gives you a plus 10 defense, but you're sacrificing a mithril for it. And the other source of this item in particular is from Omega and Wicklin. So if you see those items on those characters and you have space to pick them up, always pick them up and just drop one of your crappier pieces of food. And also herbs heal even more than holy water. The only issue is that they come from tree and they don't come with a buff. So they heal a lot, but you sacrifice a tree item, which is pretty valuable these days. And then the best food in the game, purely because it comes with a lot of experience and it heals a lot, is going to be fish and chips. So fish and chips are going to be a food that take a lot of effort to make. You have to get your heated oil, you have to go get your fish and go get your chips and then fry them together, fry those separately and then fry them together. And the reason why these are so valuable is because the payoff is pretty big if you get a lot of them. If you guys don't know how the mastery system works in Eternal Return, it actually goes off tiers. So for the most part, like each tier is twice the experience as a previous tier, but also there's a bonus for first time crafting, for the first time you craft something. So the first time you craft fish and chips, you'll almost always gain like a level of crafting mastery and a level of food HP mastery right off the bat. And then even if you repeat craft fish and chips, it's the exact same as if you crafted a blue food for the first time, which is a lot of experience. So if you play a character that relies on levels, fish and chips is literally your deity. And that's the reason why fried ramen and scrambled eggs aren't quite seen as much, because you go out of your way, you go out of your way for these foods and you don't get as much experience and they don't heal as much as fish and chips. And fried chicken is good because you just make it on the spot when you find the heated oil. But yeah, I hope you guys kind of got more information off of this. I'll be trying to include visuals and graphics for all the foods I've talked about that are actually valuable. If the foods are bad, I probably won't bother with putting in details and visuals for them. But for stuff like fish and chips, like the heated stone foods, the on-route items, I will put a graphic in while I'm talking about them in post-production. And I guess you'll see them by the time you get to this part anyways. But I hope this guide, like if you guys are new players, again, just pay attention to the on-route and the accessible and mediocre items, and you can never almost go wrong. And then once you've gotten used to building your on route food and then you're accessible to mediocre foods, branch out, branch out, go for the fish and chips, and once you've gotten used to fish and chips, you can make any food in the game, I guarantee it, once you've made it once or twice. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys have a great night, great morning, great afternoon, great evening, whatever it is, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, maybe, for another video. Have a good night, bye-bye.